We're discussing teachers' unions and education reform with the president of the American Federation of Teachers, Randi Weingarten. The AFT is the nation's second largest teachers' union. And you, Randi Weingarten, since assuming this post, have become part of a magnet, I guess sort of a magnet for some of the criticism being directed at teachers' unions. I mentioned earlier that unflattering article in the New Yorker that was written by Stephen Brill about the so-called rubber rooms where teachers facing disciplinary hearings spend their days. The article quoted one principal thusly, saying Randi Weingarten would protect a dead body in a classroom, and we got this email from, well, it's a Facebook posting from Jeremy who says, if tenure keeps teachers locked in and guaranteed a job regardless of performance, it seems to be against the interests of students in all schools. What do you say?
Actually, tenure, all tenure is supposed to be is that before you get fired, you have a hearing in front of somebody who's supposed to be impartial. That's all tenure is supposed to be.
It implies to most people that the general feeling is that experience makes better teachers.
There's a couple of things it implies. The reason tenure started years and years ago was because, you know, in so many places in the public service, it was corrupt. So somebody new would come in, everybody of the different party would be thrown out. Or if somebody if a principal didn't like you because of your race, you'd be thrown out. If somebody didn't like you because you got pregnant, you'd be thrown out. So tenure was about trying to create merit and trying to say that experience and what you do was more important than who you know. Now, you know, there are some problems with the tenure system or with the due process system in New York City. But what was so disappointing about that story is that the writer knew that the school system was supposed to hire 25 new arbitrators to clean out these rubber rooms, a contract that I had just done right before I left New York, and decided to blame the teachers' union rather than to blame the school system. We do not want, whether it's in D.C. or Chicago or New York, no one wants a teacher that isn't good for children. And what happens in New York City is that even if there's a hint that there's a problem, what the union does is it says it's okay to pull the teacher out. Just do the case quickly.
Here are two emails we got. The first from Stephen Alexandria. No matter how fresh the ingredients, how capable the kitchen manager, how efficient the prep line, how can one expect a fine dish from a bad cook? Burnouts and those teachers that just can't connect with students must be replaced for our children's sake, despite protection from overpowered and misguided unions. And this from Paul. In New York, where the guest comes from, it is virtually impossible to get rid of a lousy teacher. Please ask the guest what types of accountability measures she advocates to address poor performing teachers, including, if necessary, their removal. What does thou advocate?
We actually, in New York, and again, it was surprising that Steve Brill would use something so disparaging from one particular principal as opposed to the other 1,400 principals in the school system with whom I worked. But I guess you could always find one. That ultimately, we negotiated several different ways of making the due process system both faster and fairer. And frankly, the UFT has the same kind of peer review system that Kojo just cited from Montgomery County, where that peer intervention system actually removed a lot more teachers than anything the school system did, because it is about making sure all teachers are good. That's really important. But it's also, how do we help them be the best they can, and how do we help give students the other conditions that they need so that teachers can teach?